The village of Delmare lay where the hills rolled lazily into a dark, whispering forest, bordered on one side by a deep, slow-moving river and on the other by a stone road that twisted like a serpent into the misty unknown. It was a quiet place, where the days passed slowly and the nights passed even slower. The sky always seemed a little overcast, the shadows a little longer than they should be. But it was peaceful, if you stayed away from the road after sunset. Everyone in Delmare knew this rule. It wasn't written anywhere, it didn't have to be. You felt it, even as a child, that tug of unease when dusk settled and fog began to rise from the trees. Parents would call their children in early. The market stalls would close just as the sun kissed the hills. And always, the shutters were locked tight before the moon appeared. But rules meant nothing to Lena Holberg. She was 17. A wiry girl with storm-colored eyes and a streak of defiance as strong as the river current. She lived with her grandmother, old Marnie, in a crooked little house on the village's edge, closer to the woods than anyone else dared to live. Her parents had vanished when she was 5, lost in the fog one evening on their way home from the other side of the forest. No one spoke of it anymore. But Lena remembered. She remembered the sound of her mother's laugh, warm and golden. She remembered her father's hand, always calloused but gentle. And she remembered the way the fog had whispered the night they didn't return. "Don't go near the road," Marnie said for the 100th time that week, her voice cracked like dry parchment. She sat by the fireplace, knitting something out of thread so dark it could have been spun from the night itself. I know, Lena muttered, peering through the window. Fog had begun to roll in again, soft and white, like breath on glass. Marnie didn't look up. "That fog ain't natural, girl." "You say that about everything," Lena said with a smirk. "The wind's not natural. The birds are whispering secrets. The cat's possessed." Marnie's needle stopped mid-stitch. Her cloudy blue eyes, still sharp, fixed on Lena. "The fog watches, Lena. It listens. And it never forgets." Lena snorted. "So now the weather holds grudges." Her grandmother stood with surprising speed for someone with bones like creaking floorboards. She crossed the room in 2 steps and gripped Lena's arm with fingers like iron. "There are things older than your jokes," she hissed. "Older than this village. It has a name, but names give power. You do not speak to it. You do not look for it. And you do not go on that road after dark." Lena stared, shocked by the sudden seriousness in her voice. She nodded slowly. But of course, as soon as Marnie was asleep, snoring softly by the hearth, Lena did exactly what she'd been told not to do. The night air bit cold against her skin as she stepped onto the front path. She wore her father's old coat, far too big, and carried a lantern in one hand. It flickered with a reluctant orange flame. The fog was already gathering thick on the ground, curling around her boots, ghostly and silent. She could see no more than 10 feet in front of her. But she knew the path to the road well. She'd walked it dozens of times in daylight. "I'll prove it's just weather," she muttered. "Fog doesn't watch people. Fog doesn't whisper." But as she walked, her steps grew slower. The fog wasn't like daytime fog. It moved strangely, not drifting but shifting. Like it was choosing where to go. It coiled up trees like ivy and pulled back when her light passed over it. Once, she thought she heard the dry crackle of a footstep behind her, but when she turned, there was nothing but gray silence. The road appeared at last, a long ribbon of stone laid down centuries ago, now cracked and eaten by moss. Lena stopped at the edge of it, her lantern casting a soft glow on the stones. The air was too still. She was about to turn back when she saw it. A figure. Just at the edge of sight, through the shifting mist. Tall. Motionless. Almost too still. Like it had been carved out of shadow. She raised her lantern, trying to see better. The light flickered again. This time, the figure didn't vanish. "Hello?" she called. "Is someone there?" No answer. Just the wind, if it was even wind at all. Her voice sounded muffled, like someone had placed a thick blanket between her and the world. She took a step forward. The figure didn't move. Another step. The fog thickened. Then, the figure moved. Not with the jerkiness of a man or even the slither of an animal. It just shifted forward. Like it had never really been standing still, just waiting to be noticed. Lena froze. Suddenly, her breath came fast. She turned and ran. She didn't remember most of the sprint home. Only the sensation of the fog pulling at her ankles like fingers trying to slow her down. Only the sound of something moving behind her, quiet, steady, deliberate. When she burst into the cottage, she slammed the door and shoved the bolt across with shaking hands. Her heart beat like thunder in her chest. Marnie was already awake. She sat in the rocking chair, unmoving. "You saw it," she said flatly. Not a question. Lena couldn't speak. She could only nod. Marnie stood slowly and walked over to the window. She took a pouch of salt from the mantel and sprinkled a heavy line across the windowsill. "It knows you now," she whispered. "You looked at it. That's how it begins." "What is it?" Lena croaked. Her grandmother closed the curtains. "Some call it a fog spirit. Others say it's the ghost of a lost god, still wandering. I've seen its shadow in every decade of my life, and my grandmother before me saw it too. It comes for the curious. The defiant. It likes those who don't listen." Lena wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly feeling the cold in her bones. "Will it come inside?" "Not yet," said Marnie. "Not if we're careful. Salt at the doors. Iron by the bed. And no looking out the windows after midnight." Lena nodded. The house felt smaller now. Darker. The silence outside louder than before. She climbed into bed that night with a lump in her throat and iron scissors beneath her pillow. And just before sleep took her, she heard it again. Soft footsteps. Right outside her window. And a slow, steady breath, foggy and cold, against the glass. Somewhere around midnight, she heard it again. Tap. 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 3 soft knocks on the window. She pulled the blanket up over her head. The knocking stopped. Then came the breathing. Slow. Wet. Close. The kind of breath that fogged glass and tickled your ears. She turned toward the window, despite herself. And she saw it. A face. Not pressed to the glass, not even close, but clear. As if it wasn't outside the window at all, but inside the fog itself. Its features were wrong. Too symmetrical. Too smooth. Like someone had tried to make a human face from memory and hadn't gotten it quite right. It didn't blink. It didn't smile. It just watched. Lena covered her face with the blanket and didn't move until the gray light of morning began to break through. She was pale when she came down for breakfast. Marnie noticed immediately. "You looked at it again," she said without accusation. Lena nodded, trembling. "I couldn't help it. That's how it gets in." "In where?" "Your mind," Marnie whispered. "That's where it likes to live. That's where it makes its nest." Lena gripped the table. "I saw its face." Marnie dropped her cup. It shattered on the floor. "You never look at the face," she said sharply. "Not unless you want it to follow you forever." "I didn't mean to. Once you've seen it, it sees you in return." Lena felt the room tilt slightly, like her stomach couldn't keep up with what she was hearing. "Then what do I do?" Marnie looked tired. So tired. "You stay awake as long as you can. And when you must sleep, you do not dream." Lena blinked. How do I stop myself from dreaming? You don't, said Marnie. But you can hide. I'll show you. That afternoon, Marnie taught Lena an old protection rite, something passed down from her grandmother, and hers before that. They burned mugwort and lavender. They placed stones under the bed, one white, one black. Marnie dipped a finger into a bowl of ash and drew 3 tiny symbols on Lena's forehead, chest, and wrist. Don't wipe them off, no matter what you see in your sleep, she warned. What happens if I do? You wake up, she said grimly. And so does it. That night, Lena did her best to stay awake. She read an old book about herbs until the words blurred. She recited nursery rhymes backward. She even pricked her palm with a needle. But sleep came anyway. And with it, the fog. She stood in a corridor of trees. They rose high above her, too tall for the real world. The fog was thick but glowed faintly, as if lit from within. She heard laughter. Children's voices. But they were far away. Lena. The voice was soft. Familiar. Lena, come here. She turned toward it. The fog parted in slow spirals. Her mother stood at the edge of the clearing. Alive. Smiling. Lena's heart leapt. Mama. Come home, darling, her mother said, voice wrapped in honey. It's time. Lena took a step forward. Then stopped. Something was wrong. Her mother's smile didn't move. It was frozen, painted on. And her eyes, Lena realized, horrified, were solid white. Come home, her voice said again. But her lips hadn't moved. Behind her, the fog swirled, and something stepped forward. The figure. It didn't walk. It floated, just slightly off the ground. Like it didn't quite belong to the same rules. It wore her father's face this time. And then her own. And then something else entirely. Lena screamed, and woke up. She shot upright in bed, heart pounding, sweat on her skin. But something was wrong. The room was still dark. Too dark. The candle had gone out. And the window was open. The salt line had been disturbed. There were footprints, damp ones, leading from the window to the side of her bed. Marnie burst into the room moments later, holding a coal poker. She took one look at the footprints and hissed through her teeth. It got in. The footprints led nowhere. Damp, wide-set, and too long to be human, they began at the window and ended beside Lena's bed. No exit. No retreat. Just, gone. I didn't open the window, Lena whispered. Her hands trembled in her lap. I swear I didn't. I believe you, Marnie said quietly, kneeling down. Her fingers traced the wet shape on the wooden floorboards. Her brows furrowed. This isn't rainwater. Or dew. Then what is it? Marnie didn't answer. Instead, she stood, pulled the curtains shut, and locked the window with 3 iron latches she hadn't used in years. It left something behind. Lena's head jerked up. What? Marnie crossed the room and reached beneath the bed. She muttered a protection charm in a language Lena didn't know. Her fingers wrapped around something, and when she pulled it into the dim light, Lena flinched. It was a tiny object. Round. Shiny. Almost like an eye, Lena whispered. It was glassy and pale blue, like a marble, but something about it felt alive. It pulsed faintly in Marnie's hand. Not with light, but with intention. It's a watching stone, Marnie said grimly. It left this so it could keep seeing even in daylight. Lena backed toward the door. What do we do with it? We bury it. Under black earth. And we say the unmaking words over it. But that won't stop it. Then why bother? Marnie looked her dead in the eyes. Because if we don't, it will grow. They walked together in the early morning light, when the fog was weakest. The cemetery lay just outside the village, an old, crumbling place where even the headstones had begun to forget the names they bore. Marnie brought a spade, salt, and a candle made of tallow and poppy seeds. Lena carried the small box, and inside it, the eye twitched as if aware of what was coming. Marnie dug the hole beneath a broken statue of a weeping angel. "This ground's been blessed, more or less," she muttered. "It'll hold." Lena shivered as the box dropped into the earth with a soft thud. Marnie lit the candle and began to chant. Lena didn't recognize the language, rough syllables, hissing sounds, strange rhythm. But the air grew colder. The birds went silent. And in the distance, something screamed. Not loud. Not human. Like the wind itself had found a throat. That night, Lena refused to sleep. Instead, she sat by the fireplace while Marnie ground herbs with a stone pestle. The smell of sage and crushed nettles filled the room. "I need you to tell me what it is," Lena said finally. "I told you. A fog spirit. A mimic. A hunter." "No," Lena said. "Not the name. The truth. Where did it come from?" Marnie paused. Then she sighed. "It's older than the village. Older than the forest. There was a time the fog never cleared here. My grandmother used to say this valley was its nest. That it came down from the mountains, lost, hungry. And it stayed. It made the fog. Or the fog made it. No one knows. But people began to disappear. Children first. Then travelers. Then anyone who looked too long." Lena leaned forward. "What does it want?" "To belong," Marnie said softly. "It mimics people. Faces. Voices. Dreams. It learns by watching. It learns what you love. What you fear. It becomes the thing you trust most. And then it calls you into the fog." Lena swallowed. "And what happens when you go?" Marnie stared into the fire. "No one ever comes back the same." That night, despite every ward and charm, sleep found Lena. And the fog was waiting. This dream was worse. There was no forest. No trees. Just a hall of mirrors. She stood in the center of it, barefoot on damp stone, her reflection stretching in every direction. The fog crept along the glass. It didn't hide the reflections. It enhanced them. She walked slowly. One mirror showed her as a child, mud on her face, eyes wide and wild. Another showed her in her father's coat, staring out at a road she couldn't see. Another showed her asleep, breathing softly in bed. But then she saw one that wasn't her. Same face. Same clothes. But the reflection grinned. Slowly. Cruelly. And then it raised its hand, and Lena's did not. Lena stumbled back. The reflection didn't. It stepped forward. The glass melted like water, and it came through. She woke with a scream caught in her throat. Marnie was already there. "I felt it," she said. "You dreamed too deep." Lena was soaked in sweat. Her mouth was dry as ash. "It touched me. In the dream. It wore me." Marnie placed a hand on her forehead. "It's beginning to take root. We don't have much time." By morning, Lena saw the signs everywhere. The trees outside leaned slightly toward the cottage. The fog came earlier than ever, before the sun had even set. And the townsfolk avoided her. Muttered prayers when she walked by. Elric wouldn't meet her eyes. "They say you let it in," he whispered, backing away. "They say you're marked." Lena turned and ran, back to the cottage. Back to Marnie. "It's inside me," she said as soon as she crossed the threshold. Isn't it? Marnie didn't lie. Yes. Lena paced the room, frantic. What happens now? We fight it. From inside. But to do that, you'll have to go back. Back where? To the place it comes from. Lena stared at her. The road? No, Marnie said. Beyond the road. Into the fog. Into the space between. That night, they prepared. Marnie made a poultice of dream root and iron dust. She bound Lena's wrists in blessed cord. She gave her a charm, a small bone wrapped in twine. This will help you find your way back. I don't understand. What do I do there? You find the nest. Where it keeps what it steals. And then? You destroy it. Lena swallowed hard. And what if I can't? Marnie looked at her for a long moment. Then you don't come back at all. Lena lay on the bed. The candle flickered beside her. The charm was warm in her palm. Marnie pressed a kiss to her forehead and whispered, I love you, like I loved your mother. Be stronger than we were. Lena nodded. She closed her eyes. And fell into the fog. The moment Lena slipped into sleep, the fog claimed her. But this was not the same mist that curled through the trees or ghosted past the village gates. This fog was alive. It breathed. It watched. It smelled faintly of rotting flowers and burned leaves. She stood barefoot on soft black soil beneath a sky without stars. The fog pressed in from all sides like wet fabric, shifting with a mind of its own. The only light came from the charm in her hand, glowing with a dull golden pulse, like a heartbeat. She clutched it tightly. Somewhere in the distance, she heard a whisper. Lena. Her name, stretched unnaturally long. Then again, closer this time. Laina. It was her mother's voice. She spun toward it, but there was no one there, only fog, rising and falling like breath. She turned again. This time, the voice was her own. You came looking. Didn't you? Always so curious. The fog parted. Before her stood a gate. Black iron, impossibly tall, with a single unmarked stone standing beside it. Lena approached cautiously. As she stepped closer, the charm in her hand flickered faster. The air was cold now, so cold her breath came out in slow puffs. She reached for the gate. The second her fingers touched it, a vision hit her. A child in the woods, lost, crying. The fog wrapping around her ankles. A hand reaching from the mist. And a face with no eyes, only dark, endless pits. Lena stumbled back, heart racing. But she didn't stop. She pushed the gate open. And stepped through. Inside was a place that should not exist. A landscape made of stolen things. Toys half buried in mud. Shoes with no owners. Photographs with missing faces. And scattered throughout, the fog's victims. Some stood, unmoving. Some sat, heads bowed. Dozens. Hundreds. Maybe more. They weren't dead. They were sleeping. Trapped in dreams not their own. Is this the nest? Lena whispered. No one answered. But the charm in her hand grew hot. She moved forward. Each step revealed more of the stolen. She saw a wooden horse she'd lost when she was 6. Her mother's scarf. A cracked pair of reading glasses, her father's. She fell to her knees. It wasn't just a nest. It was a burial ground of memory. A voice echoed through the fog. Not loud. Not booming. But everywhere. You came to steal them back. Lena stood. They were never yours. They were. They are now. Everything that is forgotten belongs to me. The fog thickened, then twisted into shape. A figure emerged. Its body was built from reflections. One shoulder held her father's posture. The other, her mother's frame. Its face shimmered, cycling through faces, hers, Elric's, even Marnie's, none staying longer than a few seconds. You forgot them, it said gently. You let them slip. I only kept them safe. Lena's voice cracked. You took them. You trapped them. The figure smiled, her own smile reflected back at her. Why fight it? You've seen how cold the world is. How people forget. I remember everything. I hold it all here, where it can't fade. I didn't forget, she growled. I grieved. The fog hissed. Grief. The sweetest door. Lena gripped the charm. It burned now, bright and hot. Let them go, she said. Or I'll tear this place down. The figure's smile widened, too large for its borrowed face. You think you brought light? And suddenly, it split. Dozens of fog shapes surged toward her, wearing the faces of her friends, her grandmother, even her own, but twisted. Laughing. Weeping. Begging. She screamed and threw the charm at the ground. It shattered. Light erupted. The fog shrieked. Not in pain, but rage. It recoiled. The dream shapes dissolved. The stolen trinkets burned with light. The sleeping forms stirred, some blinked, some turned their heads. The nest was breaking. Lena felt the ground shake. The voice screamed. You would destroy what keeps you safe. You would tear down what remembers you. She turned, heart pounding. I'd rather be forgotten than belong to you. She ran. Through the collapsing world. Past the gate, now twisted and cracked. Past the shadows of the stolen. The sky above split open, and light, real light, broke through for the first time. She leapt. She woke screaming. And this time, it wasn't her grandmother's face she saw first. It was her mother's.